Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into the weeds on the Avenues gang in Los Angeles. It's quite a history.
It really is. We've got this, well, pretty comprehensive source here. Looks like an online encyclopedia overview that takes us through their whole story.
Yeah, so our mission really is to kind of unpack that, figure out how this gang evolved, their territory, what they actually do, and the impact they've had. We want to get the key stuff without getting totally lost in the details.
Exactly. Make it clear, make it focused.
And, the first thing that jumped out at me, how old this group is, like really old.
Right. Not something that just popped up.
We're talking the 1920s. And get this, they didn't even start as a gang. It was a social club initially.
Which is fascinating, isn't it? How does that happen? A social club turns into, well, this.
It makes you wonder about those very early days. What was that club even like?
Well, it's maybe not that unusual a path, unfortunately. Young people, especially in certain neighborhoods, they band together for support, maybe protection, a sense of belonging. The source mentions these Flores brothers in the 40s as being important founders, but, well, there's not much known about them, apparently.
So, kind of shadowy figures early on.
Seems like it. And their early stuff. Simple assaults, maybe some neighborhood disputes. Nothing like what came later.
Okay, so pretty low-level stuff initially. But the source points to the late 60s as a real turning point. Heroin arrives.
Yeah, that looks like the big catalyst when you introduce something like heroin, highly addictive, very profitable.
Right.
Existing networks, even social ones, can get twisted pretty quickly into drug distribution networks. The structure's already there, in a way.
So the club structure kind of morphed.
Exactly. A shift away from the community thing towards making money from drugs, different economic reality.
And by the 70s, it wasn't just some loose group anymore. The source says, highly organized gang, controlling 6 miles in territory. That's significant.
That's a huge area, and it fits the pattern, right? More crime, especially organized drug trade, means you need more control. Control territory, protect your business, deal with rivals. That expansion, those clashes, it probably all fueled itself.
Then the 80s hit, and cocaine enters the picture, and the violence seems to ramp up again. The source mentions going from fights to shootings and stabbings.
Yeah, cocaine meant bigger profits, much bigger. And when the money gets bigger, the willingness to use serious violence to protect it, well, that goes up too. The stakes are higher.
Makes sense. More money, more problems, more violence.
Exactly. The shift in how they fought really reflects that.
But then, the 90s, methamphetamine takes over. And that period sounds just incredibly brutal. Northeast LA, 500 gang-related shootings. Is that right?
That's the figure the source gives. 500. It's hard to even wrap your head around.
Wow.
It just shows the devastation the drug trade caused. Meth, maybe easier to make or distribute because of those Mexican labs mentioned.
Yeah.
It just fueled these insane turf wars. That number, 500 shootings, it really paints a picture of the chaos.
Yeah, absolutely terrifying for anyone living there.
No kidding.
Okay, so let's talk territory specifically. The source names Highland Park, Cypress Park, Glassell Park, Eagle Rock. Those are the main areas.
Core zones.
And they have these cliques, right, like subdivisions within the gang.
Yeah.
43rd Aves, Avenues 57, Cypress Avenues, Division Street, Drew Street.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Cliques controlling specific streets or blocks based on where members live. It allows the larger gang to kind of manage a wider area through these local crews.
And historically, that whole area, their barrio, was almost 6 square miles.
Which, again, is huge. Really shows their footprint back then.
But things are changing now, it seems. Gang injunctions, rising housing costs. The source says members are moving out. San Bernardino, Riverside, other parts of LA County even.
Right, which raises questions, doesn't it? Are these efforts working or just displacing the problem? You might see injunctions push people out, but if the root causes aren't addressed, maybe new chapters just pop up elsewhere. Interestingly, though, the Drew Street clique seems pretty resilient.
Yeah, the source mentions that specifically. Despite raids, despite even tearing down buildings, they use their bastion on Drew Street. They're still there.
That suggests really deep roots in that specific spot. Maybe strong local ties, a tough internal structure. Something makes them harder to dislodge. Law enforcement has focused on them a lot, which tells you something too.
Okay, let's shift to their business activities. The list is long.
It is, very long.
Murder, assault, arms trafficking, drug trafficking, extortion, hate crimes, kidnapping, racketeering, car theft, robbery, burglary, vandalism, intimidating witnesses, even human trafficking. It's like a portfolio of crime.
It really suggests they're adaptable,
Yeah.
opportunistic, involved in basically anything illegal that generates cash or power.
And the source puts a lot of emphasis on the hate crimes,
Yeah.
targeting African Americans,
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep black families out of Highland Park. Some people called it ethnic cleansing.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
It's incredibly disturbing. And it's not just talk. Members of the 43rd Avas were actually prosecuted for hate crimes against black residents back in 2006. So it's documented. It adds this really ugly layer beyond just, gang-on-gang stuff, targeted racial violence.
So besides the hate crimes, the big moneymakers are drugs and human trafficking.
That's what the source indicates, yeah. And not just selling on corners, storing drugs, processing them. It points to a more sophisticated operation.
And guns, too. Selling everything from handguns to assault rifles.
Which just pours fuel on the fire, doesn't it? Arming themselves, arming others, it directly impacts safety way beyond their own disputes. And the source links them to over 100 murders in the last 20 years. Mostly rivals, it says, but still, 100 lives.
Stark numbers. What about connections? The source mentions the Mexican Mafia. Says the Avenues are basically under their control in prison.
Yeah, that's a crucial link. The Mexican Mafia, La M, holds huge power in the California prison system and influences many Southern California street gangs, the Sureños.
So the prison connection reinforces their structure on the outside.
Absolutely. It provides hierarchy, discipline, communication lines. It ensures the gang keeps operating even when members are locked up. And it defines their alliances, like with the Sureños and their enemies, like 18th Street or Satanas. It places them in that whole complex gang landscape.
And their own internal culture. Sounds intense. Secrecy, a strict code of silence, break it and you could be killed. Respect, loyalty above all. Challenging outsiders, guarding borders fiercely.
Pretty standard for organized crime groups, really. That code of silence, the omerta kind of thing, enforced by violence, is vital for them to operate without getting busted or having internal splits. Respect and loyalty hold the group together.
They even have specific tattoos, right? The skull with the fedora and bullet hole. Or just the letters, LA, AVS, A's, Avenidas.
Yeah, visual identifiers. Branding, almost. Shows you belong, intimidates rivals, stakes a claim. And like the source says flat out, they have a reputation as one of LA's most violent gangs. That reputation is part of their identity, too.
It seems like they've had moments in the national spotlight, too. President Clinton called them out in '95.
Yeah, for a president to name a specific street gang, that means they've caused a lot of trouble or hit a nerve nationally. It definitely signals how serious things were.
And then that horrible killing of the little girl, Stephanie Cohen, in '95. Caught in the crossfire. That must have been huge news.
Oh, absolutely devastating. A 3-year-old killed. It just brought the human cost of this violence home in the worst possible way. Events like that create immense public pressure for action.
And more recently, 2008, the killing of Deputy Sheriff Abel Escalante. Accusations pointed at Avenues members.
Attacking law enforcement is always a major escalation. It shows a certain level of, brazenness, and it guarantees an intense response from the authorities.
So, wrapping this up, it's quite a trajectory. 1920s social club to this deeply embedded, violent criminal organization. Decades of drugs, hate crimes, violence, a huge negative impact on Northeast LA.
That sums it up pretty well. The long history, the way they adapted to different drug markets, staying put despite police efforts, the Mexican Mafia connection. It's a really complex and, frankly, concerning picture.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it leaves you with a final thought, maybe. After all this time, all the law enforcement efforts, the injunctions, the changing neighborhoods, why does a gang like the Avenues persist? How do they adapt and survive?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah. What does it say about crime, community, maybe deeper societal issues in a place like LA? What allows these problems to keep going, even when so much effort is spent trying to stop them? Definitely something to think about.